Hi, did you know that sometimes adults have to make very hard decisions? Well, there was a man in the Bible by the name of Abraham, and God asked him to do something that was very hard. Let's listen to Abraham's story.
Many years ago, God decided to build a great nation so that this nation could follow him and bless the world. God chose Abraham as the man that would begin this nation. But he and his wife Sarah wondered how God would make this happen. They were getting older and older, and they still had no children together. But of course, God kept his promise. Finally, when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 years old, they had a baby. They named their son Isaac. Abraham and Sarah loved Isaac very much and looked forward to the day when Isaac would marry and have children. Then those children would grow up and have children, and then those children would grow up and have children. Abraham loved his son and loved God. Even though Abraham loved God and believed what God said, a day came when Abraham was tested. The testing day was the day God asked Abraham to do a very difficult thing. During the time of Abraham, people showed their devotion to God by placing food or sometimes an animal they had killed on an altar and burning it up. This was called a sacrifice. Even though Abraham knew about this kind of sacrifice, he had never heard about the kind of sacrifice that God asked of him on this testing day. God said, "Take your only son, Isaac, the son you love. Go to the land of Moriah. There kill him and offer him as a whole burnt offering. Do this on one of the mountains there. I will tell you which one." Most people would have just said, "No way, God." After all, Abraham loved Isaac. Besides, Isaac was his only son. God had promised him that Isaac would grow up and have children, and his children would grow up and have children. So the one day God's people would be so many that no one could count them. If Isaac died, this could never happen. And that is when Abraham realized something very important. God would always do the right thing. If he obeyed God, even in this very hard thing, God would make it all right in the end. He thought that maybe God would let Isaac die, but then he would bring him back to life. Abraham did not understand exactly what would happen, but he had faith in God. He would do what God said. When Abraham and his son got to the top of the mountain, they stacked stones on top of stones to build an altar. Isaac asked his father what animal would they put on the altar. Only Abraham knew that Isaac would be the one on the altar instead of an animal. And then the time came for Abraham to do what God said and kill his son. But do you think Abraham actually killed his son? No, he did not. At the last minute, an angel called out in a loud voice and said, "Abraham, stop!" Even though God knew that Abraham had enough faith to obey him, God did not want him to actually kill Isaac. What a relief! God would never want a person to be killed and burned on an altar. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in some bushes. He and Isaac offered the ram as a sacrifice on the altar. On that day, Abraham learned that he loved God more than anything else. He would always have faith in God. And Isaac continued to grow up and follow God. And guess what? He had children, and then he had children, and then they had children. As years passed, the number of Abraham's descendants became so many that they were difficult to count as the number of stars in the sky.
Wow! Just when Abraham thought he was going to have to kill his own son, God did the right thing. And that's something that we can always remember. God loves us, God cares for us, and in our lives, God is always going to do the right thing. So when you're thinking about doing the wrong thing or doing the right thing, always choose the right thing. Because when you do the right thing, God is with you because you're being just like God doing the right thing. Matter of fact, that leads to our chant for today. We can always trust God to do, and you're going to say the right thing. I'm going to say we can always trust God to do, and you're going to say the right thing. Let's try it. we can always trust God to do. We can always trust God to do. And you are right. We can always trust God to do the right thing. Obey God because He loves you and He will always do the right thing. Bye-bye.